is the first thing I say.
Welcome to This Week in Housing, Wednesday, September 23rd, 2021. I'm Michael Williams, and this is
Corey Shields.
And we had roles reversed today. All right, Corey, what are we studying today? What are we talking about in This Week in Housing?
All right, so I got the headlines pulled up here.
Okay.
First one, front and center. Hot U.S. housing market cooled some in August. And there's a little subtext here. Existing home sales dropped 2% from the prior month as buyers pulled back, supply tightened, and prices eased.
Oh, how about that? So, cooling housing market. Market's down 2%. Is that from July to August? Because July is typically the hottest and highest market that we have in the year. So that headline sounds scary, but it's actually what happens every August, right? What else happens in August, Corey, that most people start to focus on?
I feel like the answer is school.
Back to school, right? Hard to go see a house when we're getting little Junior ready for his shopping spree and buying all his folders and pencils and all that kind of stuff.
Back to the routine, gotta readjust.
What's the other thing that happens right before school starts that takes everyone's attention? It's a trick question.
That is a trick question because there's not an answer that I have.
I will tell you what usually happens to the Williams. We go out of town. That last little vacation that we gotta squeeze in right before school starts, right? Because when school starts, all the extracurriculars happen. Trying to figure out that new schedule, like, okay, we got dance on Tuesday, we got cheerleading on Thursday, like what do we have time for, right? So as we are trying to start that new school year mid-August, that first weekend in August, we aren't here. We are at the beach, at the lake, whatever it may be. We're getting that last little bit of freedom from the summer in, right? So it is typical that the housing market would cool in August if you're comparing it to July. Now, I read a little bit of that article and I noticed that it said it's 1.9% lower year over year. Well, that is also true. Mm-hmm. But last August, a lot of kids didn't go to school. They were still staying home, right? They were still taking classes from the beach or the lake or wherever they were, right? We were all supposed to be under this pandemic heading, right? We were supposed to be distancing ourselves from each other. So last year's probably not the right year to compare it to. Yeah. But if you compare it to 2019, the numbers are way higher in August of 2021 than they were in 2019. So I would say headlines are awesome, but pay attention to what it actually says too. And frankly, July was really hot for a whole bunch of reasons. June was really hot for a whole bunch of reasons. And the market has been crazy for the last 6 months, so it's okay if we had a little 2% drop, right?
Inevitable.
Yeah, we are still doing really well. So those are my thoughts on that headlines. What's next?
Let's see what's next. Existing home sales fall 2% as first-time buyers are priced out.
Yeah, so I will say while you're looking up the rest of that, some of that is going to point to there is some buyer fatigue in the market. Sure, there's some buyers that are going to pull back. As far as the supply dropping, there was that moment in the spring where lumber prices started coming down, and so builders kind of waited for a second. They saw the peak and they think lumber's coming down, so instead of getting the permit this month, we might wait till next month to see if the lumber goes lower. Then next month it's lower drastically and they think, okay, let's wait till next month to pull that permit because it might even be lower then. So once they pull the permit, they're going. Yeah, they're getting the footers dug, they're getting the lumber package brought. So as lumber prices dropped, less permits got issued because they were trying to figure out like how cheap is lumber gonna go. And then it got to a comfortable price and then a lot of permits happened. So when those permits happened, the footers got dug, the lumber packages got delivered, we started seeing the pre-sale contracts show up again. So I think there was that little blip in the market where, okay, maybe we should pause for just a second. When lumber hit its peak, nothing happened. Like permits tanked. And you can look back at the headlines in February and March and probably January too. Builders were really nervous about where this price was gonna end up. So that's probably explaining a piece of that.
Right. Where home prices are going next, according to forecast models. They mentioned a couple different data points that they're using here, multiple opinions, but it looks like the general consensus is somewhere around 2.7% to 5.8%,
okay,
according to the article.
What do you think of that? When we were prepping for this show, I predicted 7 before you could answer. I was like, oh, it's going to be 7%. You said 2. I'm like, whoa, what are you reading? So then you come up with the other, 4 or 5%. It's hard to say, obviously. We need a crystal ball over here somewhere that I can just grab when you ask me these forecasting questions, that I can kind of rub it and be like, okay, the 8 ball says yes, 5% is the answer. I will tell you that 23% last year was a huge jump. If it goes up by 3% next year, the average of those two, I'll take it. Yeah, 13% is a really good number, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know that we'll get all the way to 13%, right? So my prediction for next year, I will go on record to say I think it's between 7 and 8% year over year for the Dalton MLS as far as prices go. We may actually sell less homes next year, but I think prices will go up.
Well, what we're going to do is we're going to clip you saying that. And then in a year, we're going to see. How's it hold up?
That's right.
Your reputation is on the line.
Are you going to clip me in November when I say, I think prices are going to go up 4% and we're going to sell 6% more houses?
We'll see what happens.
There you go. All right. Any others?
Did you have some that you wanted to go
I was just going to mention that mortgage situation where mortgage demand is higher. Okay. And then another headline that I've read recently that I mentioned on our newsletter was the Evergrande or Evergrande, depending on how you want to say it. The Chinese real estate conglomerate is failing, and so they missed a couple of mortgage payments today that they needed to make. And so that could have a contagion effect from people that have loaned them money that are outside China, right? So most of these huge companies like that have credit from Deutsche Bank in Germany and Chase Bank in the United States and banks in China, of course. And so that is a global situation that our stock market now is down 2 or 3% the last couple of days just from the fear of that contagion. And contagion just means that it's just like a virus, it can be contagious. And so this bank may fail because they had too much money loaned to this one company that's not going to pay their bills now. And if this bank fails, the next bank may also fail because they may have loaned that bank money, or they may have exposure to some of that real estate company. So it does have a kind of a cascading effect over other banks as well. So mostly the U.S. banks are going to be okay, but there may be some fallout. Lehman Brothers took down the global financial system when they failed, right? So I don't think this is another Lehman Brothers. I think it could just be a blip in the credit radar, but it is possible that it causes some liquidity problems for banks that aren't going to be able to lend as freely as they did 2 weeks ago. Right? So something we got to watch. That's a headline that is worth reading the whole article when you see something about Evergrande.
Yeah. Generally a good practice always, read the whole thing.
Yeah.
Those headlines are a little misleading at times.
Well, the idea is you click on it so that you read the story and see all the ads that they sell to people like Sally North Georgia, so that we can have our name front and center, right?
Exactly.
There you go.
Very cool. So next week we will come with some statistics. Thank you for joining us on This Week in Housing. I'm Corey Shields.
I'm Michael Williams.
See you.